to let us know this thing's functioning. I'm going to assume it is, and crack on anyway. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and whatever works for you. I haven't stolen that from Rocky. We did compare notes earlier. That's how she introduces her podcast. I'm Alan Walker, editor of Chat Talent and co-founder of Udder. By the way, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, where we're broadcasting this piece, you're missing out a little bit. We're only able to broadcast this main stage session to other platforms. So if you want to be involved in everything after this, and trust me, you do, you'll need to join us here on Hopin. So to do that, click on the link in the description of the post that this video's in, and it's a way better experience over here. And more importantly, you can get involved in the conversation properly. Just a quick FYI, we've smashed our 2021 record for registrations. We've had registrations from all over the world, many from the UK, of course, because that's where we're based, but also from India, Australia, Nigeria, Canada, the US, South Africa, the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Poland, Sweden, and Romania. To name but a few, there are some others there as well. So we're really pleased that this has become a global event, and the diversity of that list is a great start. Particularly as someone who celebrates difference as I do, it warms my heart to see such interest in this. This is still a relatively new event format for us and a new platform in Hopin, so there's some just little housekeeping stuff I need to cover. I'll jibber-jabber quickly on, I promise. Today, we're all here for a conversation about diversity, equality and inclusion, and I do mean a conversation rather than us lot on screen just broadcasting stuff at you, our audience. I want you to get involved. We want as many people who have joined us today, and not just our contributors and moderators, but our attendees also, to take part. So a quick overview of what to expect about the event. In terms of format, I'm joined here on the virtual stage for this first session by Rocky Howard, Bob Athwell, Chris Dinwiddie and Alicia Bob. You'll get proper intros from each of them shortly. This main stage bit is about you getting to know the experts as much as everything else, or the contributors, so you can decide which session to drop into when we break out later. I've got a couple of questions that I'll lead with to get folks warmed up, but then I'm really keen to focus on what you all want to hear about. So do start to pop any questions or topics you have into the stage chat. That'll be level 1 participation, a relatively easy way to get involved. At 1 o'clock, we're going to break out into 4 themed but relatively unstructured and definitely conversational sessions, with one each of our contributors in each of those and a moderator to help the conversation to flow. This is where participation really starts to ramp up. Anyone attending the event can come on screen to ask their questions and get involved in the conversation. And we massively encourage you to do so. This is where things get really interesting, I think. I'm going to be paired up with Chris, and our conversation is going to be themed around D&I in corporate land. Jeremy Russon will be with Bob, and their session will be around social mobility. Rocky's going to be with Theo Smith, and they'll be holding another conversation about how we can get the voices of diversity heard. And we've got an extra special bonus session. In that one, Alicia and her colleague Lee Thomas Ragg from Radical Recruit are going to be talking about the incredible journey from her being homeless to overcoming considerable barriers, finding employment, and starting to take control of her own destiny. Alicia's asked me to give you a bit of a fair warning about that session. Some of the topics might be challenging. There might be discussions around alcohol, other drugs, violence, and homelessness. Those type of things. If you're likely to find these things upsetting, then Alicia's story might not be for you. But I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. Finally, at 1:30, we'll move on to the networking piece. This platform will randomly match you with someone for a 5-minute power chat. You can talk about whatever you want, and once your time's up, you're matched with somebody else. I found it quite nerve-wracking at first when I first gave it a go, but the randomness of who you're matched with and the value you'll get from those conversations, I think is brilliant. So a quick last bit of housekeeping. Navigation between the schedule, the stage, the sessions, and the networking is on the left. On my screen anyway, I assume it's the same on yours. And chat's on the right. There's a stage chat, session chat, and event-wide chat. So make sure you're in the right place when you're leaving comments. And if there are any issues, our team, well, Ellen anyway, will be behind the scenes to help. And if you're not sure about anything, pop a question in the event chat and she'll jump on that. Finally, I'm going to stop talking a second. I'm going to do the thanks to everyone now, because once we leave the main stage, there's not really an opportunity to do that. So a quick big thanks to our partners for this event, Vervo. They've supported us as a true partner should. We'll follow up with some more info about them after the event, but you should definitely check them out. They're definitely one way to start tackling diversity issues in your hiring processes. And a quick thanks to all of our frienders. That's our friendly vendors, if you're wondering. They're spreading the word about the event to their networks. And a special thanks to Zinc and Candidate ID, who went above and beyond and generated a ton of registrations. We don't charge our vendors for sponsorship. We simply ask them to spread the word, and those that make the biggest impact are rewarded with silver sponsorship. Even just for sharing the event, our vendors get bronze sponsorship. And of course, thanks to you all for coming to this event, and an even bigger thanks to you, to those that you have spread the word. Again, it means a ton. And finally, thanks to our volunteer moderators, Theo Smith and Lee Thomas Ragg, for helping out. Chat Talent is a small team, and without their kind support, we'd have to run a less extensive event. And a big reminder that for every registration we've had for this, we're donating £5 to the Trussell Trust, a worthy cause, I hope you'll agree. So thanks for your support on that. Whew. So let's do this. Let's start with intros. I'm going to go alphabetically. So Alicia, that means I'm picking on you first. Alicia, can you introduce yourself and perhaps also tell us why diversity, equality and inclusion is important to you personally, and the role it plays in your professional life as well?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I work for Radical Recruit as their engagement coordinator. I first was introduced to them by my mentor, as a candidate, because I was looking for work and at the beginning of the pandemic. And being a former homeless person, I had barriers to work that I needed to help overcome which through their workshops that they run weekly, I overcame these and was eventually employed by them, working as their engagement coordinator. Now I have the opportunity to help people that were going through similar things that I went through, get back into employment. What really drives me to be passionate about diversity and inclusion is because I come from a family of, my grandfather came from the Windrush generation to the UK, and his opportunities were limited. He was, really highly educated in where he came from, Trinidad and Tobago, and that didn't really make a difference coming to the UK. And that's why I'm really passionate about upholding the diversity that society has begun to have. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks, Alicia. Bob, same question to you. Who are you? Why is DE and I important to you personally and professionally?
Yeah. Hi, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Nice to be with you. My name's Bob. Bob Atwell. My day job, I have various hats on, but my day job is I work for Skyscanner. I hope you use us for all your travel needs when we can travel. For those of you that can travel, please use us. We're the best. But I look after racial diversity globally, as well as our early careers. And I guess why I'm here, because my sort of specific focus sort of outside of my day job. So, DEI is really important. I'm part of the DEI team. But I've got a PhD on social mobility. I'm not an academic, so don't ask me any academic questions. I won't tell you anything. I might just kind of chat about stuff and then let you answer the question you asked me. But the point being is my PhD, I'm only joking, the academics are amazing people. My PhD is really around the labour market and early careers and early talent. And why that's important to me is, much like Alicia, I'm a child of immigrants that came to the UK from the Punjab in India. I am a Punjabi Sikh. I should have lots of hair and a turban and a beard. I'm trying my best. It's not working out for me, but I'm still a Punjabi Sikh of heritage. I basically, along with my siblings, went to university. My mum's illiterate. She still can read a little bit now, but she can't write. But she had no school in her village where she was born, back in the northern part of India in the Punjab. And their sort of wish was really that we just went to school, let alone further education and higher education. So I'm one of these kids. I've gone through the system. I've managed to acquire some degrees along the way and hopefully displayed some talent along the way. And I'm now trying to help level that playing field for other people like me. So that's why I'm here.
Fab. Cheers, Bob. Chris, your turn. So who are you? What role does DE and I play in your personal and professional life?
Yes, I'm Chris Dinwiddie. I'm actually a career recruiter. So I've spent recruitment, variety including, places like Accenture, GE, Diageo. I spent 10 years living and working in South Africa and on the African continent. My current role, I'm head of employer branding for a science and technology company called Merck Group. We've got about 58,000 employees across 3 businesses that focuses on pharmaceutical, life science, and electronics. My passion for DE&I comes probably from a couple of areas, and I know some of you might be looking at me going, why is this sort of white mid in this session? And I think I represent an important voice, which is the kind of allyship from my group, if you like. My mother was disabled, so my mother was in a wheelchair, so I spent a lot of my early years managing disability within the household, and latterly my wife is Black. So I have good perspective into what it means from all sides of the conversation. Yeah, I try and bring my allyship to conversations like this where possible.
Fantastic. Cheers, Chris. So, Rocky, last but certainly not least, tell our wonderful attendees who you are and why DE&I is important to you and how it manifests itself through your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rocky Howard. I am the Chief Diversity Officer at Smart Recruiters, where we believe that you are who you hire, right? And I am also the host of the Voices of Diversity podcast, and I identify as she, her, Black, Christian, Gen X, wife, and mom. And for me, that's my unique value proposition. It's how I show up in the world. But it also is reasons why it's been a little bit more difficult for me to show up in the world if we tell the truth about it, right? And I am an advocate of all dimensions of diversity. I show up as a Black woman. I am raising Black children. I am married to a Black man. But there's multiple of dimensions of diversity within all of that that brings wonder and beauty and contribution to the world. And I believe that we should all be able to do that. It shouldn't be so dang gone hard to just walk through the world and be yourself. And I think that, companies don't wake up like most people. There are 10% of the world that are just a-holes, right? But like most people don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to exclude this group of people. Bias comes into play, lack of education comes into play, and certainly knowing how to attract people comes into play. And I'm on a mission to intersect that and make that better.
Fabulous. Wonderful. Okay, excellent. Questions time now then. So before we go to the audience, and audience, do feel free to start popping those questions into the stage chat. I'll try and keep track of them. I'll try and ask the group as many of them as I can. I do have I've just got at least one that I'm keen to ask, possibly a second one. And actually this touches on your point from a second ago, Rocky. This is a bit deep for me, but what do you believe causes the most issues around a lack of diversity, representation, equality, inclusive cultures, etc.? Call them what you will. Do you think it's a belief or behavioural problem? Things like biases, the various isms, etc. Or is it a problem of systems, our ways of working and structure? Anybody take that? Whoever's feeling brave.
Yeah, I think I'm the one that's off mute, so I'll take it first. I think it's a combination of both, right? I think that one of the challenges with diversity, especially as a business proposition, is it's the only business proposition that challenges people's long-held beliefs and value system and the way that they've been trained. It's the only business proposition that involves guilt and shame at times. It's the only it's the only business proposition that challenges. Like, Alicia, you may not fall into this, but the rest of us that all have gray hairs grew up being told not to talk about race and religion and politics in the workplace. And now all of a sudden you want me to talk about it. And then heaven forbid, if I say the wrong thing, I'm categorized one way or the other. I think the complexities of this from an emotional perspective make it really hard. There's no one path forward. And that's just as we're talking about top line diversity. We haven't even gotten into intersectionality and the multiple dimensions of diversity. And then there are systemic problems which perpetuate bias within the processes. So I think there's no right or wrong answer. It's very complex, from my point of view. Now I get to shut up.
Bob, Chris, Alicia, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, what Rocky said, I did relate to a lot, because growing up also I did have them conversations with my parents. You know, I want to go somewhere or work somewhere where I want to be my authentic self, and I want to work with companies like that. And you know, there's nothing they could say to kind of persuade me otherwise. So I definitely relate to that a lot. Definitely.
Do you think?
I think you made a good point there. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, Rocky, I think you made a really good point around it's really uncomfortable. 20 years ago, we didn't have these conversations. It was treat everyone equally, don't talk about it. And the fact that, you know, even today, the way that DE&I is kind of sold within an organization is it helps performance, right? Not because it's the right thing to do, or because it's fair, or because it's about uplifting society or humanity. The key way of selling it is it helps us perform better as a company. And I think that says a lot about where we are at the moment.
I was going to say, I've got another point on there as well. And I think the two things that strike me, and I totally agree with everything that everyone said, that I think equality and equity are two different things. So I think that's another issue, because equality doesn't mean just by getting different people at the door that you've gained it, because then the situation may not be equitable for all. So there's something there about the semantics. And then the other issue about it, really, if we're really frank about it, Alan, is that, you know, many people have never had our lived experience. And I think Rocky's point around the intersectionality and the nuances of that lived experience is also important. So, you know, when I tell my colleagues or friends that, you know, I intuitively go into a bar, into a restaurant, wherever I may be, and immediately scanning to see if I'm going to get into some sort of trouble in this place because someone doesn't like the colour of my skin, is just what happens. Intuitive, you will never know I'm broadcasting that, but I've just done a scan to kind of figure out where am I going to be safe.
And that's completely alien to, well, I guess people who look like me, because I don't have to have those day-to-day experiences. And it's hard to, you can try and understand them, but unless you've actually, oh, it's a cliche, walked in your shoes or people in your situation shoes, then it's really hard to truly understand them.
It's tough. It's tough, you know, from my, because as a relatively privileged white man, you have no concept of what you're talking about, Bob, right? Part of the solutions have got to come from middle-aged white men understanding these kind of topics and these kind of conversations. And until you walk in someone else's shoes, you do not know what it is like. You know, until I, it's a bit personal, but until I started to, you know, met my wife, I wouldn't have understood all of the microaggressions, all of the accidental things that people may say or may do and maybe don't know. Of understanding, but that true understanding from more storytelling and more honesty and more examples and things that people maybe don't know about. And I think that's how you shift the awareness. I think there was a well-known statement recently, I can't remember which company it was, where the CEO said, you know, unconscious bias training doesn't work. And I can't remember which company, one of you might know which company that was. And I was like, well, yeah, of course it doesn't work unless you change the processes and the systems. But is your unconscious bias training, does that really relate to live examples from people? Or is it just a theoretical kind of, let's go through some stuff? And everyone goes, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I now know that I'm a little bit biased, right? But have you heard the real stories? Do you really understand on a human level, not corporate level, but a human level, what some of the issues are and why they are so important? So just to back you up there.
Chris, I can't like, if I would stand up and cheer, because that's part of the problem. I think it is, we tend to think like we have these academic conversations about diversity and bias, et cetera. And it seems like it's something that happens to people over there, or that happens at other companies, or it happens this way. And I had that experience. It was the whole reason I started my podcast last year upon the murder of George Floyd. In my organization, we did these courageous conversations. And I remember talking about literally the week before my husband getting pulled over in his own neighborhood for what we call driving as black. Driving while black goes back to what Bob is saying. So, you know, Chris, Alan, if your tail light goes out in your car, you kind of just make a mental note that you need to replace the tail light. Tail light goes out in my car and I'm like, oh my God, honey, the tail light is out. You can't drive the car. I'll take it during the day. I'll get it replaced, because it's just another excuse for someone to harass my husband for driving his car in his neighborhood, right? And I think until you understand the challenge that that brings and how that comes into our boardrooms and the power of connecting it. Like people who talk to me who said, oh my God, I didn't know that happened to Raymond, or that happens to you, or that happens to Xavier. Why the hell wouldn't it happen to me? I'm not exempt. And it is that moment where you're able to look at someone you know or understand it through someone else's eyes, that this is about people, that changes the game. And I do believe it's conversations like this. I believe we can change this thing one story, one conversation at a time.
I think absolutely. I've got this theory that most people aren't bad people in terms of them being biased, or even some isms. Isms are another step beyond bias, but you know what I mean. It's that I think most people are, as you say, it's not the 10%, it's the 90%. They don't want to be. They don't want to be biased against individuals, but actually I think most of the problem is that many people haven't got experience, exposure to those stories. They've lived in their little bubble of the world, that with people that look like them, talk like them, act like them, went to the same school as them. So they just haven't experienced those things that have happened to you, Rocky, that you mentioned, or to you, Bob, or to you, Alicia. It's just completely alien to them as much as possible. But you have to, and so exposure, I think, improves things. And how have you described exposure, whether it's listening to individual stories from people, or actually people being more mindful of integrating with others and actually wanting to reach out and spend time with other people from different backgrounds. I think all that helps.
I think it does, Alan. And I think, you know, I think it's my perspective anyway. For me, it's about trying to level stuff. It's not about, if you've had opportunities or you've had privilege, you know, that's your fault. That is what it is. It's basically the leveler. But the reality is, though, the system is not designed, or has not been designed, to be a leveler. And what I mean by that is that, you know, there are a number of organisations that, you know, have turned me down because they don't like the way I speak, the way I conduct myself, you know. And when I say the way I speak and the way I conduct myself is that I've always been this way. So it's simpler being me than trying to be somebody else. So, you know, if I don't fit your culture, it's okay. I don't really want to be there. And I think that's really important. The other issue is distance travelled. So distance travelled, you know, our own unique journeys and stories, the learnings we get from that isn't necessarily wrapped up in at 18 to go to university or go somewhere else, or get on some early talent program and that's it. And you're no longer talented if you haven't done that. So I think there's something about distance travelled. And I think then there's this kind of misnomer, and I mentioned this when we were talking originally about the word talent itself. And the whole thing, McKinsey and Co, and if they're on the call, I apologise to them, but it's true. But this war for talent was never a war for talent. It was war for very narrow talent. If you go fishing in the same pools, you're only going to find the same people. And that was the biggest misnomer ever. And that talent war implies that you've had access and opportunity. So I'm testing your experience of access and opportunity as opposed to whether you have got talent. And so, you know, if we want to be a leveler, if we want to have this type of conversation, we are going to have to make people uncomfortable. We are going to have to get people to understand, you know, this isn't an issue that we're saying is your fault or anything else, but actually you need to recognize this. And I would go as far as saying, and I agree with the language that we use as well, but I would say that one of the challenges I had put to me was around allyship, because we've built everything and we need allies. And one of my colleagues basically sort of said to me, the most qualified to talk about this are probably black men and women, other people of colour, indigenous people, white women, literally anyone else, and white men are probably the least qualified to kind of have this conversation. But he goes, the most likely people to change, those that have racist views, are probably white men at the top, and then followed by white women, other people of colour, indigenous people, and black men and women at the bottom. Because when we talk about it, it's kind of like, nah, that doesn't really happen. It just happens to somebody you've seen on the TV or whatever, right? And so reality is it's about education, and I don't mean education in the school sense. I mean education about no, it happens. Just like Rocky said, you're going to get pulled over. Unfortunately, in London, when we were allowed to commute in those good old days on the train and get off at a station and get on the tube, times whenever there's been a high alert, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been asked to stop and look at my bag because I've got a rucksack or my beard's a little bit longer and I look like a certain profile.
Yeah, it's even hearing this, and I class myself as fairly worldly, and that I have got a reasonable mix of people in my social sphere that give me some insight into that. But even what you've just told me there, that doesn't even cross my mind when I go to the station or I get a train or anything like that. I don't ever think that's going to happen to me, even though I have a beard. But there's something else very different between me and my beard and you and your beard, Bob. As you say, it's race, it's ethnicity, and that
beard and a rucksack. I've got a beard and a rucksack. With a laptop, and I work for a tech business. I don't know why I would have a rucksack.
No, exactly. How dare you? How dare you? And quickly, before we break, we've had a question from the audience. So I'd like to just quickly ask that before we shoot off into our breakout areas. So Lindsay Harbottle, and hopefully I pronounced your surname correctly there, Lindsay, has said that equitable approaches are often really necessary and productive, but they can be hit or miss depending on the narrative and how they're framed. Sometimes they perpetuate that them and us divide and end up being counterproductive. Do you have any thoughts or examples of best practice when it comes to this?
Well, counterproductive for who? I guess is the question, right?
I think. Do you not feel you can create the kind of them and us? So it can be quite threatening, kind of a white male, because you do feel a little bit sometimes, oh, am I under attack? And like you said a little bit earlier, have I done things that are wrong, right? So I think that might be, from my angle, that sometimes does it feel like a bit, whoa, am I under attack? And am I going to lose my dominance in society? And, what does it mean for my job? And, I think that's where it can become a little bit conflict driven.
And I think we need to walk in other shoes. I have felt attacked every time I walk in a store and I'm profiled. I felt an attack every time I'm classified as a working mom and someone assumes that I don't have the time or the ability to do the job, or I don't have the right degree, or every time that I speak clearly, I'm a direct shooter. I speak directly and I'm a clear shooter. And then I'm an angry Black woman. You speak clearly and you're doing your job, right? And I say that to tackle this way to give you guys a different perspective. Like, with all due respect, white men are feeling uncomfortable now. That's the way I have felt showing up for work for the whole 52 years that I've been here. And so I think what we need to do is make a commitment to equity and understand that this is going to be uncomfortable and it is going to take some sacrifice, and it is going to take people to step aside at the table, make room for someone, and then actually want to engage with them at the dinner table, right? And the reason why this is all and so guys, let me tell you, I know it's uncomfortable, right? And I know it can feel divisive. And I think the way we stop that is within our corporate cultures to go, this is the commitment we're making. This is the culture that we have. We will be there to support you through the change. We know it's going to be difficult, but then if we're really committed to it and people are like, this is not what I want to do, then I think they need to make a decision. Just like Bob made the decision earlier, I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And so if cultures don't like me, I don't want to show up. I think if you're really committed from the top throughout the organization and you're saying, this is who we're going to be, then people who don't align there probably need to find a different organization. It is going to be hard. but people have to be willing to do the work. This is a change of heart and minds. I'll tell you, it's the toughest job I've ever done, because it's hard to change hearts and minds and have those conversations. But if we're not willing to do it, we're going to stay stuck, and we're going to stay stuck with our good intentions, and we're never going to have the right impact.
And then, on the most important things difficult. It is going to be hard, but it's worth the effort, isn't it? Ultimately, you'd like to think.
I think it really is, Alan. And I was just watching the couple of things, and again, sort of perspective around. I think there's a number of protected characteristics when we talk about diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion, and it applies to all. So I don't think it's one or the other, but let's be frank about it. Since last year, 2020, and Black Lives Matter coming back to the forefront in terms of, it's always been there. It's been there, I think, since 2012, 2013, when it first became a thing. But George Floyd's tragic murder basically brought it right back in there. And the issue was, we're about to have a conversation which really kick-started, the racial equity, racial justice and social justice aspects. And so sometimes there's more of a focus on certain attributes. It doesn't mean that not everything is important, but actually the lived experience and the intersectionality is really important to understand the nuance. So the experience I have as somebody of colour, of Indian descent, when I walk down the street, people will cross the road. But if I was black and I walked down the street, probably 8 out of 9 out of 10 people would cross the road, because I'm quite tall and quite broad. And I think it's really important to recognise that there are differences between us, and actually those lived experiences are nuanced. But I also think around the belonging piece, what we're really trying to do, in my view, is create belonging for everybody. And through belonging, we are inclusive, we're equitable, we're equality driven, and actually diverse. And diversity comes in cognitive thoughts as well. So cognitive diversity is absolutely critical. And I think part of the issue is, I'm afraid to say, sometimes people misunderstand what we mean by some of the semantics. So I think there's a language and a semantic issue we need to solve, and an optical illusion that we need to get people's heads out of, because this is not diversity. My colour doesn't make me diverse in my thoughts and my opinions. I think I am, but that's not the solution, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. I'm mindful we've overrun a wee bit. It's my fault. Terrible time mastering. So I think we're going to say thank you to everybody who's followed us here on the main stage, and break out into the sessions now. And just a reminder again, if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc., unless you come over to hop in, that's the end of this for you. You only get to see the main stage, people. So if you want to carry on getting involved, and you really should, if you want to hear more from Rocky, from Alicia, from Bob, from Chris, maybe even me, then come over here and hop in and join in the conversation. So thank you, everyone. To navigate to the sessions, click on sessions on the left-hand side, and then click on the session that you want to drop into. And I encourage you all, get on stage, ask questions, join in the conversation. Don't just be a silent partner watching. Try and join in. It makes the session so much better. So I'll see you over in mine with Chris, and thank you, everybody, for being on the main stage. Much appreciated. Bye, guys.